All right, Malakas, welcome back to another episode of Panic telling you guys what to do. This is just going to be a quick tutorial on SRS. Hopefully you guys got VoiceTech and Viacom all up and running. If not, I have another tutorial for that you guys can watch. This is just strictly SRS to hopefully get you guys going and get us up and running here. So the first thing you need to do is go to the website there and download the installer, which is going to come in the form of a zip file like this. I use WinRAR to use all of my zip files. You guys can do whatever you want. All right, once you have that, then extract it into a folder. I like to keep things simple and keep everything in the same place. So I created a folder under all my program files here for SRS, and this is what is out of that extraction. So then I'm going to run installer, and it's going to give us some options here. So the first thing I want to do is I want to change the install locations. I'm going to go ahead and put it right back into the same folder that I created, SRS, right there, just to make things easy so it's all in one location for me. Your save game folders, remember this is not DCS. This is literally just my saved games folder where I have DCS and all that stuff, but that's all it is there. And then keep that checkbox installed, DCS client scripts. And it's not required for the server, but we're using the client install anyways. And then I want to create a shortcut. So now I'm going to click this right here, install update DCS. This should take not very long. Boom. All right, and it installed the scripts too. You can see my save games, DCS, Open Beta, and Open Beta Backup. So it installed scripts into all those folders. So hopefully that is all we need to do. Now, one real check before we do this is you can run this auto updater here, which will basically update your file, update your simple radio to make sure that it's all good to go if you want to do that, just to make sure you have the latest version. But I had to download the latest version, so I'm good. All right, now let's go and run this auto updater here just to make sure we have the latest version. So it looks like it's downloading the same version. We'll let that run here and I'll come back here in just a second. Okay, it is almost done here. Boom. All right, this is going to come up. It's also going to pull up the website behind you. We don't need that. And basically just going to verify, hey, is that where I want it? Yep, that's what the location I wanted initially. That's where my saved games is. So I'm just going to type in yes there. And again, it's going to redo everything just to make sure we have the latest version. Give that a second to complete. Boom, all the scripts are in there. So we should be good to go. Now, one thing we're going to do to check is I'm going to launch DCS, and we need to make sure that this is launched or installed correctly before we continue. I had an issue where I installed it. I thought I was good to go. Went to go run the actual SRS and it didn't work, and I found out it's because it didn't actually run the script for DCS. So give it a second to load here. Just takes a minute. By the way, if you don't have this little launcher updater, this is a pretty cool tool that I like to use, especially because I use VR mostly, and this will let you launch it without running VR. And it makes it really easy and nice, especially if I'm going to create missions and do that kind of stuff. All right, so you can look down here too. There should be an icon for it. But just to make sure, I'm going to go into the special under settings and scroll down, and you should see DCS SRS. I'm going to leave auto launch checked, and I don't need that overlaid. You can do left control, left shift, and escape to show it, and I'll show you how to mess with that here in a second. Go back in the install folder here. We want the client radio. I'm going to go ahead and send that to the desktop as a shortcut. Boom, so I have this icon now. I can put it with all my other DCS stuff over here. All right, and let's go ahead and run that. And it should run as administrator. You guys don't see that on your end. It just goes black. But that's because I make sure to run it as administrator. Okay, now you're going to get this window. So the first thing we need to do is make sure that we have our microphone set up. I'm using the Arctis 7, so I'm going to make sure those two are set. I like to crank this up to about 15. You can even go further if you want, but 15 seems to work pretty good. And no mic output pass-through. Make sure that's selected. Basically what this does is it kind of gives you that echo that you hear in a normal radio. But guys have had problems or issues using that, and it creates too much of an echo, so we're not going to use that there. Obviously, this is where you're going to put in the IP address. This is default right now, and then we don't use any of that stuff right there. And this is how you're going to know you're connected to somebody when you get all this working down here. All right, for controls, this is important here. So I use the throttle of the Warthog. Especially while I'm out here. I don't have the Cougar, so you Cougar guys that use the Cougar throttle at home might do something different here. I've tried to figure out if it's good to have it both. Your radio switch you have in DCS set to the same, and I kind of like it not to be the same. And that way I'm not transmitting stuff to the tanker, stuff to the AWACS over the frequency, and I'm just talking on the SRS frequency. So you can set that how you want, but because of that, I'm going to set, so I use the thumb switch for the contact switch here for the COM switch, and I use towards me as radio 1, away from me as radio 2. So I'm going to go ahead and set this to button 3, which is up, and radio 2 is going to be button 5, which is down. And that's how I like to have it. You guys can set it, obviously, however you want, whatever makes more sense for you, but make sure you set radio 1 and radio 2. Now we'll go to favorites. Obviously, if, Bones probably the one that does this the most. I don't have his address offhand, but you put his address in here and hit the plus symbol. That'll save it as a favorite. So back on the general tab, it pops it up pretty quickly. All right, then the last thing, settings. So to make sure we have everything, so off on, I'm going to leave all this off. Yep, I'm going to leave that on, noise suppression on, don't need it minimized, don't need it to start minimized. This I haven't messed around with. I kind of think I'm going to set this to on, but right now I'll leave that off for you guys. Just because I'd like to switch because I use different aircraft. Definitely play connection sounds, set path here. You can just double check, where is the path set to? Which is what you did on that first slide anyway, so that should be correct. Require admin on and allow Viacom transit inhibit. I believe we're going to set that. I'm going to set that to off because I use a separate thing for Viacom. All right, I've tried to create a profile, by the way, and it doesn't seem to save it every time I start it, so I'm not going to worry about that. You guys can do that as required. All right, so here's the big thing here. I like to turn these off, but I definitely want the transmit effects. Leave this radio encryption effects on, but here's the big one right here. Radio switch works as push to talk. You need to have that on. I had that off and it didn't actually work the other day, and it sucked. So make sure that's on. Yep. Always allow hotkeys. Yeah, leave that off. I'm going to leave that off. All right, now here's what I like to do as well. I know most of the time we set these to both. I like to do this. I like to set my radio 1 audio channel, which is going to be essentially radio 1. So like for the Viper, if you have 305 and radio 1, and when I hit the SRS switch, which is button 3, and I transmit over SRS over 305, I'm only going to hear you guys respond to my left side. I like doing that because radio 1 is on the left-hand side of the upfront control panel. Radio 2 is on the right. That way, when I'm hearing things coming in my left, I know which radio you guys are transmitting on. You guys can do whatever you want there. That's what I like to do. Makes it easy for me. And that's pretty much it. And then the last thing to do, obviously, is to select a server and get going. Now you're going to see when Bones has a server up, and you pull this up for the first time, and you go and select Bones here and connect, you're going to see this pop up and this pop up, but the game isn't going to be. And when you are in game, you're also going to see, until he unpauses, you're going to see like a little warning here. And once he unpauses, that should go green. And then you're good to go, and you should be able to use SRS just fine. So this is the big step, is making sure these settings are set correctly. Okay. Next thing I want to show you guys, and this is kind of a cool thing I like to do. We'll bring up the F-18, obviously. Let's go ready on the ramp. Obviously, SRS won't work if you don't have power on the jet, kind of like a regular radio frequency will. Give this a second. And I do this with all aircraft, by the way, for SRS radio. Okay, so you can see we have the aircraft going, and radio 1 should be set to 305. Yep, there she is. All right, so I'm going to hit left control, left shift, and escape. That's going to bring up the window. Now see how the window has a heading. I'm going to go ahead and take that, and you can move it like a regular window. And see this space right here? This is where I like to put it. I like to put it right in this space. So let's put it right about there. And then I'm going to hit left control, left shift, and escape again. And that window goes away. And now this is where it permanently shows up. Now obviously it's in the red because I don't have a server and I haven't selected a server. Once I select a server, these will go yellow. Then you'll see the frequency that you're on, and when you transmit, you'll hear it, and you'll actually see a TR to let you know you're transmitting, and then it'll go white to let you know you're receiving. So obviously you can see that I'm OCD, so that kind of bugs me right there. So let's go back to turning it on, and I'm going to drop it down just a little bit more. And boom, look how it fits in that right in that window. So as I'm flying around, this doesn't bug me at all. Even having both yellow scripts right there doesn't bug me one bit, and it makes it feel like it's kind of part of the airplane. You guys can do what you want. You can leave that disabled, leave it off so you don't see it. I like to see it so I get feedback on whether or not it's working. I'll leave that up to you. All right, one last thing I wanted to show you guys before I leave is before I end this video, sorry, is once you have this radio set, you'll notice a couple things. First, when I exit out, that little red message is going to stay put no matter what you do in this menu. All you got to do is Control, Shift, and Escape a couple of times, and it'll disappear. And because I didn't check the checkbox here, remember in SRS, show overlay by default, it's not going to come up every time. And it's just because I may not use SRS every time. That's why I don't like that. So let me show you when you get back into the jet. You can see we don't have it. All you do is left control, left shift, and escape a couple of times, and it'll put it right back where we left it. I did mess with it. Don't have to move it. It'll remember each time you start the game where you left it last. Now it may move depending on what airplane you fly. So that's the only other thing, only other caveat I would have. All right, that's all I got. Hope you enjoy, and we'll see you on flight night.